So, good afternoon, everyone. I'll be the host for today. Welcome to Growth Show, and I'm really excited to have you all here today. We have spoken about so many things and a lot of things, example, demand gen, brand building, growth playbooks. But today's topic is one that hits close to home for almost every marketer listening. Every quarter, we run events, conferences, roundtables, activations, and pour in real time, money, and energy. But when someone asks what those events actually did for pipeline, the room usually goes quiet. That's exactly the gap we are going to talk about today. Quick word for anyone joining us for the first time. We are Pipe Rocket, a B2B SaaS marketing company, and the Growth Show is a way of bringing real marketers together to share what's genuinely worked for them. No fluff, no recycle frameworks. And I honestly couldn't have asked for a better guest to break this topic down. Today, Shikhar Pant is joining us with us. He heads marketing at Disprz. What makes his work stand out is the scale he operates at. He runs field marketing across India, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East all at once. In a category where the sales cycles are long and the buyers are senior decision makers. He's exactly built a system that actually turns events into something measurable, something that shows up in the pipeline, not just in brand buzz. Thank you so much for making the time, and I'm genuinely looking forward to this one.
Awesome. So, Bhiksha, I don't know if it was me or it was for everyone, but I assume there was some lag there. But everybody can hear me now. Am I loud and clear? Awesome. Cool. Let me just share my screen. Awesome. I hope you guys can see what I'm sharing now. You can see my screen. Very quickly, thank you, first of all, for having me on the Growth Show, Pipe Rocket team. Thank you, Subiksha, for the wonderful, lovely introduction. Thank you for everybody who's jumped in on today to attend this session. And I think today's session is something that hits home very close, especially for us, why our events aren't driving pipeline and how to fix that, right? Very quickly about me, I've been into B2B SaaS marketing now for approximately last 8 years. I've been with Disperz now for the last 4.5 years. I've seen the company scale from sub 5 million ARR to where it is right now, and we've scaled our field marketing events motion extensively across multiple continents, multiple geographies. It is India, Southeast Asia, Middle East, US. We've done events in UK. So I think there's been a lot of learnings, a lot of things that we've gotten embarrassingly wrong multiple times till we come to the stage that we are right now as we speak. So I'm here to share a small bit of learnings from my end with all of you. Having said that, I think I'll start the session. I'll put in 3 disclaimers for all of you. While the session is about me talking you through about what kind of playbook worked for us or is right now working for us. I will be honest and I'll be candid with all of you marketers here right now that it's not that I know it all. It's not that it's a problem that I've solved 100%. I'll be honest. There are bits and pieces that have come together for now. There are a lot of things that we've started to see happen that we thought would theoretically work for us. And I think we've seen measurable progress on that front. Having said that, I'll not say that I've solved for everything. So I'll be candid about that. And I'm sure all of you have your own sets of problems with respect to how you manage events as a motion on your own. So be happy to have those as questions today or even conversations post the webinar as well, right? The second piece would be the presentation, the deck, how I have structured the deck is we've taken our learnings to how we applied this motion, the events motion at Disperz, and we've made it slightly more generalist for everybody. How do you exactly apply is always going to be dependent on your particular ICP, your market that you operate in, how do you respectively run your motion. So the idea here is I'm going to give you slightly ideas which are an overview, and you'll have to probably adapt and apply them to your respective events motion as well. And finally, I think most importantly, the events as a channel is so vast, it's so huge that it's very hard to compress it into a 30-40 minute long session. And theoretically, I kind of split the motion into two hubs. One is probably running events, field marketing motion for the developed world, which probably includes markets like US, UK, etc. And for the developing world, it's probably India, APAC, Middle East, all of these countries, right? A lot of the learnings that we've right now structured for you in the session is from the latter half. Obviously, a lot of these are generalist rules that apply to all markets across, but those markets have their own set of problems. Our markets have a different set of problems. Some are common, some aren't. So that's probably going to be the focus of the session. Cool. Having said that, I think I'll right away get into the topic now, with something, with this slide, which kind of summarizes all our collective sorrows into one place, right? All of us have been part of meetings, we've run events, we've come out of an event, we've come out of a plethora of events over a quarter, and we've sat on to calls with sales leaders, with your CROs, with your respective founders, leaders, etc., etc. And you've been asked a question on, boss, where is how much pipeline did the event bring in? We spent $50K. Where is the pipeline? Where is the revenue? Hey, the booth was packed. Why aren't there any demos set up? These are just 5 questions, but essentially the list goes on and on and on and on, right? And all of us usually come out of these meetings, and typically either there is an answer that, boss, our sales cycles are longer, the event just happened a few months back, ours is a 10-month sales cycle, or you're not really seeing the leads right now, but I think the BD team tells me that there's a lot of demos set up in the future, etc., etc. And then it all goes into a rabbit hole, right? And broadly, this is an experience that is very common, especially to companies who are still early in their GTM motion. They're still early stages. It's not like you have a lot of budget. You have a big field marketing team deployed across the globe to structure a lot of things for you, right? Some of these problems are structural in issues. Some of them are very very related to how you are running your own marketing motion. But essentially, I hope it hits home for all of you. I think we've all been there, and I think at Disperse, that's the same point that we started off with as well. Our GTM motion was running across different geographies. We were doing events in Philippines, we were doing events in Dubai, we were doing events in India, we were doing events in US, across formats. And a lot of time, we'll come out of those events pretty gung-ho, feeling that we've done a good job, but the pipeline wouldn't really be there, or whichever way you measure post-event success was getting harder and harder to prove, right? And I thought, how do we move past this? I think after having done it wrong multiple times, we decided that we probably need to move on from doing events, one-off events, to executing events as a system, right? So developing an event system is probably the through line that I'm going to be talking to you about today. How do we probably create a system around creating multi-geography, multi-region, multi-format events as a motion, right? And how do you build it, and then how do you systematically scale it? I think I'll take you guys through that. But broadly, the first thing that's very important for events, for you to understand events as a motion, is, I think, one problem that all of us do realize. I think events problem isn't just about them not generating enough pipeline, or not having enough budgets, or the biggest booth on a given day, on a given time. I think it's far more structural and fundamental in issue. And I think that's something that all of us kind of sometimes know very visibly in an organization, or is sort of something that gets uncovered as you start doing more and more and more events, right? Which is something that events usually end up being run by a committee, right? There's no single person who's really owning the channel end to end. And when I say owning, I'm not saying that marketers don't own events as a channel. They very well own the channel as an event. But the kind of opinions, the kind of calls that you take during an event, I think they get influenced by a very large committee. And that's far more truer for companies who are still scaling, on a motion across a respective geography, right? So how do you probably decide to do an event? One of your sales heads would typically say that, boss, I want to do this event because my competitor just closed 3 deals, and they tell me that this event did very well for them, and I want to be somebody who's participating in this event. So you say, okay, I'm going to do this event. As soon as you decide to do that event, you now think that, okay, I need to get my founder or my thought leader on the stage doing a session during the event. So you bring in the founder or the thought leader onto an event, and they come with their own set of ideas on what should be done, what should not be done, etc., etc. You've got your account executives who are always asking you for more and more pipelines. They have their own agenda coming to the event, and then you need BDRs on ground to make sure that there are enough people to capture leads, get custody of customers who are coming onto the booth. You're probably launching in the new AI age another agentic AI product, and that product is something that you have to put in front of customers, because the general consensus within the company is that not enough customers are aware of what we're doing. So product marketing is also baked into the system. You're dependent on them to give you a classy demo that you can showcase on the booth's floor, and multiple people get involved in this, right? The core idea being, I think all of these people come with their own separate set of agendas. You collectively are busy with the logistics of the event, making sure that you're printing booths, you're getting the big bowl to collect all business cards, and then you'll probably settle for, once everything wraps up, people have a good time, you then wrap up and start praying that all of this converts to pipeline, right? I think for me, I think that's how I kind of realized that the most underlying issue across all of these events is that I am getting influenced, and we as a team are getting influenced by just too many stakeholders across an event. And sometimes it's important to do that, especially across larger launches and bigger events. But more fundamentally, the idea is to contain the ownership and contain it end to end, and you get everybody's input, but you know why you're doing something, right? Your answer for doing an event, on why this event was successful or not successful, shouldn't be dependent on it being influenced by somebody else's opinion a few quarters back, right? So that brings me to the first rule that I think is very, very important to doing events, right? There's always got to be a fundamental way that you decide to do an event or not, right? It cannot be done on whims and fancies of an account executive or a sales head or a founder feeling that a particular vendor is right to do that event at that particular moment. I think you have to be very, very clear about that. If you do not have a rule for saying yes to an event, so you definitely need to have a rule for saying no to an event. I think that's something that we've religiously followed at Disperse now for the last few quarters as well. And it's made our life far more easier, right? A simple way, I think, and for us, it typically needs to pass through two gates. The first gate being, is there a way that I get the database for the event that I'm going to participate or not? Is there a foolproof way? Is the vendor going to give it to me, or are there going to be bad scans available on the event floor that I get to take these contact databases home or not, right? If I don't get that, and there's probably no reason for me to participate in the event, because if I don't have the contact with me already, then there is no point in me trying to build in attribution logics, building multiple things for these events. Otherwise, it's all being run on hope, right? So first of all, I think, and this is very, very true for our markets like India, like the Philippines, like Singapore, like Indonesia, like Dubai, etc., where usually the systems being run and most events are not as sophisticated as like is in US or Europe, right? You need to make sure, in obviously in parentheses, always saying that following all the GDPR protocols, all the privacy protocols, ultimately if you're doing an event for 300 people with a vendor, you need to be sure who are the 300 people who are coming on the event. Are you going to get their data or not? If you're not going to get their data, then I don't know what you're going to do post the event. And second, more importantly, at Disperse, something that we follow very religiously is, for all of our regions, we have a target account list, right? We have a target account list, accounts we want to go after for a given quarter, for a given financial year, for a given geography. If I'm participating in an event, I got to make sure that at least 60% of the targeted audience who's going to be coming up in the database in the event is going to be part of my tile. This number for us is 60. It could be 40, 80 for people across different industries, different ICPs. It totally depends. But essentially for us, what we've realized is we need it to be at least a 60% match, right? Until unless that is not there, very difficult for us to decide and go do the event. So right now it's a very simple case. We do not select an event in a given geography because somebody's told us to do it. We do it if there is a foolproof way for us to get that data, and there's a foolproof way for us to match that data to our TAL. And if that's not happening, we do not do that event. So it's good to have this in place, right? Then that solves the problem of you not being on an event because you already know who's going to be turning up at the event. Obviously it does not take into consideration an event could be a failure on its own, right? It could just be that on the day of the event it rained like cats and dogs, and probably the turnout was 50% less than what was expected out of it. You can't manage those situations, but what you can definitely manage is that you know very well that who is going to be in the event, and is there a way for you to be able to talk to them even post the event finishes off, right? So now that you've finalized whether you want to participate in an event or not, you move to the next step, which is equally important, right? As I say, that there are multiple event formats, some fit, and each of those have a respective purpose and a respective outcome, right? Now outcomes could be layered, there could be multiple outcomes to different formats, but essentially just to give you some picture idea, if you're doing a roundtable dinner for 20 people, you do not expect it to be a volume pipeline creator for you, right? It's probably great to deepen your account relationships, probably accelerate a few deals here and there, and if you're running an ABM motion, even better. But that's not a event motion that you execute to generate pipeline, right? So as I say, there are no bad formats. There is always the wrong expectation which is set from an event, right? And why I bring this up is because as soon as the dust settles around an event being a failure or a success, I think the first thing that typically does get questioned in rooms is the format, right? Typically people will say that, we're not going to be participating anymore on large trade shows, or the dinner format really doesn't work for us, or unconferences are shitty, we don't want to participate in them. But most of the times what we've seen from our experience is that people end up tying the wrong outcome to the wrong event format. So I think when you pick an event format, you should be very clear that why am I doing this format, and is it important that I do it at this point of time? Does it make sense for me to do a large trade show at this point of time, or it makes more sense for me that I've done 2 quarters of large events in my XYZ region, and now I want to make sure that some number of these deals really move forward, and there are a lot of deals hanging in the pipeline. So probably next logical step for me is to do probably a roundtable motion, bringing all of these POCs into an event, into a more bespoke uh, private event, right? So for you, it's very, very important. For everybody, it's very, very important that you tie the event to the correct outcome. So now you've solved two problems. You've solved the problem of why you want to, whether you want to do an event or not, and why do you want to do an event, right? Once you've solved these two problems or attempted to solve them, then you move to the next step, which is executing the event, right? And I think executing the event is, in my mind, one of the most critical things that's easiest to miss on, right? And I internally use the logic of saying that an event, especially a event which is not a webinar or not a roundtable event, uh, to be, you need to consider that event, your booth in that event, as a retail shop floor, right? Understand that it's a retail shop floor. It's a experience that you're curating for 100, 500,000 attendees to probably look at you, to probably take a shot, come to your booth, interact with you, get a look and feel of your product, understand what your offerings are, or further the discussion that they're already probably having with you, right? And a lot of times, and I think we've been guilty of doing this in the past as well, and that's something that's coming with experience of doing a few of these events, being on ground, being present in a lot of these events as our team executes around us, is that we kind of always miss the rigor of what executing like a retail shop floor means in the event, right? What do I mean? I, as I said in the earlier open, that everybody comes with their own set of agendas in an event, right? Now you've organized a fabulous event, you've got set up a great booth, you've got like 10 different television screens showing your product promos, your brand videos, etc., etc. Now everybody who's on the booths come with their own sets of agendas, right? And when I say agendas, I don't necessarily mean any evil agendas or anything bad, but essentially sales people who are there on the booth, they will always prioritize leads where they feel urgency, right? They probably have come there for 5 to 6 conversations where they feel this maps to my own tile. There seems to be a genuine requirement here. Wow, let me have a conversation with them, let me take it to the next level. And I think once they're done with those 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 conversations, I think they feel in their mind settled, right? BDRs, your BDRs, SDRs, whoever is on the floor with you, they will typically always have this notion that I need to generate X number of demos from a given event, right? They'll probably settle for wherever they see a chance of booking demos. Probably a lot of leads that come through in the system who are just probably there to, understand your product, who are just probably coming there for building a consideration set. A lot of times between the AE and the BDR, the ball gets dropped, right? And how do I mean it? So like 2-3 quarters back, I very clearly remember a prospect came to us on the booth, and you can very well see that as soon as a prospect is coming near your booth, is your team making direct eye contact with them or not, right? Is your team kind of leading them to the fact that, okay, you're looking at me, are you interested, please come, I'm there to talk to you about, right? A lot of things that you actually see when you probably go to buy a shoe in a Nike showroom next to your house, you probably just go there, you talk to the guy, you look at a few shoes, you come back home, and then you buy from their website or you buy on Amazon, etc., right? But you went there to kind of build a consideration set. Went there to explore, right? And how was the experience overall when you went to the store? Does a lot of time help you make a more informed choice whether you want to go ahead with it or not, right? So I think that same experience applies to us as SaaS platforms doing events, large scale events, small scale events, on the floor of the event as well, right? A lot of times you will see sales chillaxing after they've had those 10 meetings, BDRs probably going on a coffee break, and the 10 minutes when nobody was really very active on the booth, a lot of leads went by without doing much with your booth, without interact. You didn't probably get custody of their contacts, you probably did not show them the product, you probably did not give them anything to develop a consideration set amongst them, right? And this always happens because the primary responsibility of doing all of these events is never allocated to them, right? They are just a participant in the event who's supposed to come collectively as a team and execute the event, but everybody will fulfill their own respective pieces. So what I mean is, we try, at least now we're trying to do it, and this is something that we've not actively solved 100%, but we definitely see the benefit of whenever we do this, especially we do it for all our large scale events. There's a dedicated field marketer present when we are executing an event, right? And this field marketer is there not just to do the operational stuff, to make sure that all the goodies are there, everything is getting printed on time, XYZ. No, I think the more implicit work that he does is he sees and observes how are the sales folks interacting with people or not. It's his responsibility to make sure that there are always 2 to 3 salespeople on alert on the booth, making eye contact, making sure that they're interacting with all the people, right? It's his job to make sure and see, are the BDRs, is the newest BDR who's joined the team pitching us correctly or not? Is he having a proper conversation or not? Are people coming on the booth only for goodies, or they're actually coming there for some genuine consideration or not, right? All of these things have to be noted and acted on in real time, like a shop floor. And you need somebody who's dedicatedly doing it. It's a very tough job. At times, there is no JD put forward, very clear 5 or 6 steps that you probably can point to somebody to do, but it's actually the most important, because it not just informs how you perform on a given event, it does tell you what needs to be improved in the subsequent event that also you're going to be doing, right? It tells you that whether the demo logins that you created for showing a product, were they working on the floor or not? Were people really engaging with the demo or not? Did the contest that you ran on the floor to get people to come onto your booth, was it generating interest or not? What was the feedback of the people who came and spoke to you? How was the energy around the booth? Where were you placed? Was it a good decision to be placed right next to a large US based company, setting up a booth right next to it? Or were we better off placing our booth right next to where people were having their lunch, right? So all of these anecdotal information, somebody has to collect it, somebody has to synthesize it, and somebody needs to bring it back to the marketing table once the event is done, to make sure you're making better and better execution led choices for your subsequent events as well, right? And I think that's something that gets missed most of the times, and we've been guilty of doing events in US, in Middle East, where our eyes and ears are mostly the sales and the BD folks who are present on ground. But I think you cannot always depend on external feedback, right? You have to be on ground, you have to be present, you have to see what's happening. And I think this is not a rule, this is not a logic, but this is something very, very fundamental. And it becomes a challenge for a lot of scaling teams which are scaling, because if for me, like for example, I am running a multi-regional event GTM. I am doing on a given week an event in Dubai, I'm doing an event in Malaysia, I'm doing an event in India. It's physically impossible for me to have a team that's always present and doing this, because we also operate with a lean team, right? So at times you need to take a call that which are the more important events or the formats that you definitely need that respective person to be there. But I think you need to do this. And I'm sure, I think the simplest way to experiment is, if you are leading the function, if you are heading the function, if you're heading the entire marketing function, forget just doing events, etc. Be at an event from and operate from this lens, and then you will start seeing the misses, you will start noticing things where the ball is getting dropped. I think that's very, very important. And I think this will make your event experience and your knowledge of doing and executing an event far, far, far more better and more polished as you continue going about it. Cool. So I think this now broadly brings us to three things. We've done three things so far. We've solved for, let's say, how do we probably want to go about doing an event. We've solved for the fact, I will not say solved, but we've tried to attempt to solve whether we want to do an event or not, whether that event is tied to the correct outcome or not, and then potentially how do we improve the performance of the event and subsequent feedback of the event on the ground, right? Now comes the most important part. All of them are important, but this becomes even more important because this directly ties in to the fact that we are talking about, do events really translate to pipeline or not, right? And uh, before I kind of delve deep into what this slide actually talks about, I'll probably come back to a personal anecdote, a personal instance that I have seen during my tenure at Disperse. I think when I inherited and started leading the marketing function, I think we were faced. Everybody gets to do that 1 week leadership presentation on what's their vision for marketing going forward, right? And we did a lot of analysis, a lot of preparation on what exactly is working within our marketing channel for different geographies, for different sales teams, for different products, to understand what's really working for us and what's not working for us, right? And I think we came up. What our CRM HubSpot told us was that events isn't really a great channel. And why it's not a great channel? Because for most of us, events usually is the largest line item on our spends, right? On our marketing spends, it's probably one of the most expensive things that we end up doing. And the amount of directly influenced pipeline that we've generated from it is very, very low. That generally means that events isn't great, and that's at least what the CRM told me and the rest of the leadership as well, right? So that only could have taken us to two facts. One was probably there's something wrong in the way we do our events, and number two, probably we shouldn't really do events then if it's not really working for us, right? One smart thing that we had done was we exactly built something called as, we map every contact that we interact at least on our booth, on a given event, on a given webinar, and we put it on our CRM, we put it on our HubSpot, and we tag it to the event, right? And forget the directly sourced pipeline from events. When we started mapping deals created in the system from a contact, post who's post that contact speaking to us in an event, right? I think we kind of realized that if our earlier pipeline of direct conversion was probably sitting at X, the influence pipeline this way when we started, and we did not keep the channel very focused only on marketing generated lead, but other channels as well, right? Something that got converted from your outbound, something that got converted from your sales teams, etc., etc. We figured out that pipeline is at least 100x of that X number, right? And that is something that shook everyone in the leadership room, because then that kind of also fed in the view that how silently events have been accelerating your pipeline across channels. And I think we've seen that happen to us. For example, during the recent situation in Middle East, when our events channel collapsed for at least a quarter and a half, we actually saw the impact. While obviously it was a geopolitical issue XYZ, we did see the impact on pipeline from other channels also started going down, right? Because uh, that's Middle East as a geography itself has its own nuances, but we could see the direct impact. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that it's very easy to look at events as a channel, as a direct potential conversion channel, and make the mistake of thinking that it's probably not working for you. But it's very, very important to understand how it is sourcing and influencing your pipeline. And I know sourcing, influencing the pipeline, attribution is always like a hot topic between sales, between marketing, between teams in large. But I think it's if that for us the number was so large that it really shook the room, right? It really made people understand that okay, the entire number cannot be wrong. Maybe there's a 20-30% attribution issue here, but definitely that's not possible that we've generated 100x more pipeline from what we were thinking earlier, right? There has to be a reason. And I think some of it ties back to everything that you've done in the past, right? It's who is going to make sure that some when the salesperson spoke to somebody on the event floor, did the business card go into your CRM or into the salesperson's pocket and was forgotten, and it resurfaces in a conversation with sales having with that respective person 3 months later on LinkedIn, on phone call, and then it getting logged on as a sales generated lead, right? That's why I say, until unless you have the contacts, you've mapped the people who've come to your booth, to your event, there is no way for you to make it foolproof, for you to make sure that the influence part even is visible or not, right? So I think this point ties into all of your previous points. It's very, very important that you make sure that every person that you're interacting with in an event, that information is available within your CRM. If that information is not available in your CRM, then there is no point in taking the conversation even further, right? And more importantly, I think the more important part, that's the credit part, but the capture part, I think something that we made a mistake as well was, it's always important to understand that as a challenger brand, as a company who probably does not have enormous budgets to execute events, right? It's always important that okay, you probably will not have the best goodie on the planet to give, you probably will not have the biggest prizes to handhold to people who are coming onto a booth, etc., etc. But I think there needs to be a foolproof mechanism of capturing the custody of somebody who's coming to an event, right? It's your job. If let's say 500 people are coming to an event, it's your job to make sure that at least 2 to 300 of those are coming to your booth and coming to speak to you, right? And I think that's a problem that a lot of times all of us are guilty of it. We get lost in the logistics of doing an event, but there isn't enough time and attention devoted, and to think from a creative perspective. Okay, probably I'm in probably a sea of competitors. I'm probably amongst 10 companies who are probably doing a version of the same thing, right? How do I make sure that I get enough people to come to speak to me and I have them logged in my system? I think that's why it's very important that you build a good engagement, a good mechanism of getting custody of that data. When I mean that, it could probably be giving a good teddy bear on the floor of the event, which at least brought your ICP to your event, right? Our hypothesis is that a lot of our buyers for us, our ICP is CHROs, chief learning officers, chief human resource officers, who probably at least are basically in the ages of 35 to 45, 50. A lot of them probably parents to new kids, or slightly younger kids, or at least have younger kids at home. It's always great to have a very cute little teddy bear to get them onto the booth, right? That's like the most basic thing that you can do. I can come up with. So it's important. Now, it's very easy to dissociate having a teddy bear for your brand, which is probably selling a compliance tool, etc., etc. But I think it's important that that particular activity has a related outcome during that event. And I think for us, it's very important to build activities. It could be an engagement activity, something which not 20 other people are also doing on the floor, to think through that what it's going to be, because this is the activity that's probably going to fetch you people come to your booth, right? Not everybody is going to come to your booth because you have a fantastic product or you have the best tagline in the market, or you've got the most good looking booth, but you got to solve the problem of probably what makes at least somebody visit your booth at least once, right? I think that's very, very important. So you need to solve for how do you build the capture, enough people coming to your booth, and how do you build that and take the and how do you then take their how do you then build their relation in your CRM to a deal, to an account, etc., etc. So I think all of these together, right? For first developing a mechanism on saying a yes or no to an event, then on top of it building how do you go about tying a relevant outcome to that event, then understanding how do you run the event on the shop floor, on the event floor, and then actually making sure that all of it is credited in the system. All of it needs to come together. Now, it might sound like a system which seems very simple, but actually it isn't, because coming back to my original point, events usually end up being influenced by multiple folks at a given point of time. And sometimes you will realize, at least we've realized, executing a lot of these things, a lot of times going gets really tough, right? Sometimes getting sign-offs on a few things here and there, aligning people to whether you're doing something or not is difficult. It takes time. It takes a lot of patience. And I think we've also we've failed in multiple times, and I think it's taken us a while, a lot of alignment with our sales heads, a lot of alignment with our account executives, a lot of alignment with our BD team to really come and execute this plan in a way that it's being executed for us right now. So I think it's a journey. I don't think so it's something that you can implement straight away, and there will be different aspects of it that will probably apply to you, to your respective ICP, your respective market, your respective product. But I'm sure you need to do it in some form or the another, and you need to probably move towards this. I think this helps you kind of take the entire concept of doing an event. For most people, doing an event is getting a good goodie, setting up a booth, and having a good time at the event, right? But I think if that needs to flow into pipeline and conversations, I think you need to follow this process, because um ultimately it's marketing, it's the field marketer's job to own that number, to deliver that pipeline. And more importantly, I think the next step is that you also have to understand that events as a channel will never operate in isolation, right? Beyond this point, beyond this motion, beyond this playbook, I think it's very important to understand that you need your inbound, you need your paid search, your paid social, your influencer marketing. All of it needs to tie in together and save your events motion as well. You need to kind of protect that motion, because it's the largest cost item, probably largest cost item on your marketing budget. You need to protect it, because I think I have seen from my personal experience a detrimental effect that probably not doing a large scale event for a given period in a given market has on your overall brand recall, right? Ultimately, it's very important to understand that in the kind of markets that we operate at, um, a lot of users, a lot of eventual customers will make the choice of where and how they felt about you when they saw you at an event, right? um, if you are probably doing 5 events, setting up the smallest booth near the entrance, or you're doing 2 to 3 events with the largest booths amongst the largest companies in that zone, right between them, I think that helps people understand and make conscious choices, especially in enterprise, amongst enterprise buyers, because they want to see whether this is a company that I will be safe in investing my time and money on. And I think events play a big role. A lot of this is very, very implicit, not as explicit as a pipeline number or as a deal closure number. But you have to understand that from a brand perspective, how you are perceived as, how many people are searching for you post an event. You need to monitor these numbers and see the impact that a large scale event is probably happening on you. And most importantly, what we try to do is, for our focus markets, we try to create a pipeline of events across different formats. One probably is 1 to 2 events to generate a lot of funnel, a lot of volume funnel for us. Some events to probably accelerate these deals, and a few events that are tied into our ABM motion, that are tied into our partner motion, to make sure that we are also having an impact across channels and not just only marketing leads, right? So I think it's important to construct the events motion with respect to how do you think about it beyond just marketing as a function and events as a channel only, and you need to expand and go beyond it. So I think that's broadly how what we've learned so far. And again, I'll come back to the fact that I'll be very honest that this is something that is working for us. Like most people here, all of you know that a channel, as a marketer, the channel that's probably working for you now, the next quarter probably won't be the same. So it's a problem that always changes. There's continuous back and forth. You're always optimizing. So what probably works for us now probably wouldn't work for us a quarter or 2 quarters down the lane. So it's always important that you keep optimizing and you keep working on it as a channel that you're engineering. I think that's broadly all I had to say on this topic. If any of you've got questions, if there's any follow up, if there's anything that you want me to talk about, I'm happy to do it now. Yeah.
So that was such a practical and no fluff session. Thank you, Shikhar. So we have a few minutes left. So let's open it up for the audience. And if you have any questions, please drop it in the chat and I'll read it out for Shikhar.
I think there's a question from Tarun. Yeah, I think beyond demand generation. Yeah, I think that's the thing, Karun. That's the thing, Tarun. See, I think a lot of times what really happens is uh, events influence multiple outcomes. That's true. Two, three ways that we probably measure it is, again, the pipeline number is the most important number. The leads, the pipelines is the most important number. Without which any conversation that you take to the leadership table will not be very sound. They'll think it's marketing jargon that you're throwing in them at. But I think what we really look at is how much was the spike in a specific geography in terms of traffic, right? On your search console, was there an uptick? We definitely measure that, and I think a lot of times it's very, very measurable, and you can clearly see on the days leading up to the event, post the event, there's an uptick in traffic. That is one. Number two, I think we measure something called as share of search inside at Disperse, where we're constantly looking at, as a brand, especially in some of the regional markets that we lead at, what is the share of search for us versus our competitors, right? And I think it's always visible. Like for us, it was very visible that for a competitor who'd been very, very active in the market, who'd been doing events left and right, there was a visible rise I could see month on month, for his traction growing. Now, again, was it isolated only because they were doing events? Absolutely no. But I think there's always two to three things that you can measure. Number one, your brand searches. What's your share of search? What is the overall website visits that you are getting? Is there an uptick or not in with respect to doing events? And thirdly, I think always something that helps you understand whether people are engaging with you enough or not is always a great content-led distribution system that you can build into the event, built in around the event, built in before the event. We typically do that. We have a full funnel engagement built around a content asset for a respective event, usually tailored to the outcome, the ICP that is visiting the event. And I think then those are ways. But I think, again, without that pipeline and the revenue number coming in, all of those sound like marketing numbers we've seen across regions. Yeah, Nikhil's question is around whether there are differences that we've seen in India, Southeast Asia, and Middle East. I think this is like Nikhil, a, a session on its own, entirely. And I think, I'll be very honest, at Disperse, we've seen these differences and nuances. We're still trying to make a events motion which feels very, very specific to a given region, right? For us, it's still, uh, I would say, it still sounds and feels pretty much same across the regions. But I think that's a problem that we're also looking to solve in the near term. But yes, there are. So I think in Middle East, you have to understand Middle East as a market is a very, very small market compared to how you probably look at India and Southeast Asia, right? If the typical marketing logic holds that only 5% of the buyers are in market at a given point of time, um, that reduces your in-market buyers even more. And we've seen, at least in our ICP, that this is a market that typically is not very high digital. If they are looking for a product in our category, they're probably not going to be looking for it on digital or social. they're probably either going to be talking to a partner, or they'll probably be attending an event and try to see who these people are, who the vendors are. So I think it's a very different market. Southeast Asia as a market is in itself, I think the first biggest thing that I realized when I went to Southeast Asia and went to all these individual markets is, while we call them Southeast Asia, does the individual country really think of themselves as Southeast Asia? I think the answer could be no, right? Indonesia is very, very different from Philippines. Philippines is very different from Malaysia, and all of them are very different from Singapore. So each of them have nuances, have their own differences. And it's like a very, very it's like a topic in itself. Probably we can have an offline discussion on this. But yes, there is the decision making criteria, the reason for why somebody is coming to an event is very, very different across each of these geographies. And a lot of times in Middle East and Southeast Asia, when we are doing an event, a lot of times early stage brands are guilty of pretty much setting up the marketing material, setting up their booth, very similar to how they're probably doing it in India or US, right? But these are markets who look for localization, who demand local logos, who demand local people present on your booth. If they don't get that, then probably you're missing out on those. But that's on that. Vishnu is, which events do you think help in goal is solely pipeline generation? Closed door events with a small group, or being part of a large industry sponsoring them? See, all of this, I think Vishnu is dependent on what is your goal for a particular quarter, for a particular geography. I think my answer would be that both of those events are important, and sometimes it's important. So how I look at it is that, do a large scale event, generate enough leads, and all of those leads will not necessarily convert to pipeline, right? I think then you take a picture out of leads that you've interacted with, that you've spoken with, which probably you had early conversations with, bring them into a slightly larger pool of another 10-15 people that you are engaging with, your customers you're looking to upsell, and then do a closed roundtable event with all of these, right? For example, in Indonesia, we did a large scale event. The next event that we followed up was the 10 conversations that we thought were good from that large scale event. We brought 5 of our own customers that we were looking to upsell, and 5 more folks from across different channels who are already in our pipeline. We brought these 20 leaders into one room and did a very specific roundtable dinner event with them. The idea here was that, let's take the 10 conversations that we've gotten from the previous event, let's now accelerate pipeline creation on that. Now, again, the answer would also be dependent on what is your ICP. Is it SMB? Is it mid market? Is it enterprise? Depending on that, also it changes. But broadly, this is the approach that we do. And how do you collaborate with sales post event lead handover? Any specific activities? I think for us, it's a very simple thing. As soon as the event ends, we do like a triage between marketing, outbound, and sales. We look at the set of contacts that we've gotten. We very clearly demarcate which are the contacts sales is going to go after, which are the contacts they want their respective BDRs to go after, and then what are the contacts which we feel don't really have so much right now in them, so much juice in them. Those will transfer to marketing nurture, right? And then we do a whole bunch of activities with them. We probably retarget them through LinkedIn. We probably set up a good email cadence structure. But I think very, very important to categorize out of the 100 accounts that you have on your plate right now, which are the ones that sales is going to go after, which are the ones that BD team is going after, which are the ones they want you to take care of. You don't want a situation 3 weeks later where the sales guy comes to you and tells you, I thought the BDR was going to set up this meeting, I did not talk to them. Or the BDR saying to you that, there were so many accounts for me to follow up on that I could not prioritize. I had to prioritize other channels as well. So it's very, very important you fixate the individual stakeholder with the respective set of accounts and you go after. And that's the easiest and the most practical way to start off with. What is your overall experience with virtual events, especially for lead gen? I think virtual events, again, it depends on it really depends on the market that you are at. If you are I think this is a mistake that we've done in the past. I think when we were entering US, for example, right, the first event, the most lowest stake events that you can do in a region is like a virtual webinar, right? But what we realized was that if you are a no, if you're an unknown entity, if you're an unknown brand, if it's something that people have not really heard about a lot, especially in a new market, doing a virtual event will probably go nowhere, because you'll struggle to get enough people onto a webinar, right? I think, and even doing it through a paid party, paid vendor, is not going to give you a lot of juice, because they are contractually bound to get you certain number of people, but what you will get out of it isn't really going to take you anywhere. So in my opinion, I think the virtual events really help once you've built enough ground presence. If once there is enough buzz around you, it doesn't really help to be the first event of a quarter, or the first event of a financial year, or the first event of the market. So that's been my experience. We typically try to use these events, virtual events, to probably drive understanding in our existing customer base, uh, try to get them to understand our products, what we want to upsell it to them right now. But yeah, we also have to think whether we can expand to it. Apart from it, I think for us at Disperse, I think the largest event that we do is virtual in nature, because we want to do one large brand event across all geographies, and we typically do it as a virtual event. um, that's again an entire journey on its own. How do you probably do a large scale thought leadership virtual event getting a lot of people? I think no easy answers for that. How do you do it, especially for lead gen? I don't think so we can only do it for lead gen. But overall, I think we can probably discuss that on it offline. It's doing a virtual large scale event once a while, I think right now it seems to be doing well for us, and what I see some other players also doing. Yeah, absolutely. I think yes to your other question. We do try to identify prospects who are already in market and invite them to bespoke events, and that always helps us generate more leads in pipeline. Um, for us, we try to do it, and we try to, and especially for the kind of markets that we operate in, sometimes it's not always possible to do all of these activities in house. So whenever we are engaging with partners to probably organize these bespoke events for us, we give them the contact list and the companies we want them to bring. And usually in smaller markets, in smaller pocket markets like Southeast Asian, Middle East, this typically does very well. Yeah.
So we have one last question. Do
Okay.
you want to answer that?
One more, is it?
Yeah, we'll
Any
just
tactics
end with
for
this.
prospects who are in market other than intent signals? Any tactics to find prospects who are in market? Wow, that's something that even I'm looking an answer for. If there are other than intent signals, I'll be more than happy to um, happy to share it with you, Tarun. Nothing that comes to my mind right now. What are those tactics? I think this is something that can never be a tactic. I think it's more of a long-term play that you have to get to. For us, accounts that are engaging with us across channels, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's through our content, whether it's through our website visits, etc., etc., we figure out those accounts. And at any point of time, we always have x number of accounts. If we feel that are actively engaging with us, we bring them. I don't typically rely on one signal of them hiring somebody new, or them looking for just an LMS as the only signal. We probably try it because those come once in a while. For us, it's more of a journey rather than a tactic, I would say. Yeah.
So we are almost at the end of our session. So thank you so much, Shikhar, for joining with us today and sharing your valuable insights with us on this particular topic.
Thank
And to everyone who have joined today, thank you for being here. And if you've got more questions, feel free to reach out to us directly. And if today's session got you thinking about your own event strategy, we're always happy to chat. And I'll drop the email IDs and the LinkedIn IDs of our founders, Praveen and Kim. Feel free to reach out to them regarding any of your queries. So, thanks again, Shikhar. It's been a pleasure having you, and thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Subiksha. Thank you, team. Bye bye.